When you have a good idea, you usually want everyone to know, which is why I'm putting my best idea in the beginning of this video. Mortgages for dogs. They've had it too good for too long. In video games, the same principle of good ideas applies. When a brilliant or fun feature is introduced to a game, you can bet it'll come back in the sequel. Just occasionally, however, a popular or cool idea will end up bizarrely axed from the series entirely. What gives? These good ideas ended up cut from the sequel, just like my good idea is also cut following an email from the Dogs Trust. Damn, they're quick. Anyway, there were spoilers for the following.
Dark Souls 2 is, it's fair to say, often less fondly remembered than Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3. And not all my memories of those games are that fond, to be honest. But Dark Souls 2 is far from being without merit, and one really cool idea it did have was a thing called Power Stance, which shares a name with that guitar posture technique Jack Black teaches in School of Rock, but is more like if instead of guitars, all the school kids were dual-wielding longswords. A sequel I would watch. In typical Dark Souls fashion, the game doesn't really explain how to do Power Stance, but essentially, if you equip two weapons of similar classes and have high enough stats, you can switch into a special posture that makes attacks swing with both weapons. Why choose to Power Stance? Well, it confers stat bonuses like looking rad as hell and look at my two swords at once, I'm rad as hell. Too rad for developer From Software, who, presumably terrified of what they'd created, removed Power Stance from Dark Souls 3. Much, we should add, to the dismay of fans who'd enjoyed the ridiculous and overblown dual-wielding options present in the second game. Dark Souls 3 did feature weapon art, special moves, and paired weapons to replicate the thrill of dual-wielding, but for various reasons, it just wasn't the same. The main one being, these swords are small. Big swords is good. In what we think amounts to an admission by From Software that they made a terrible mistake, Power Stance did make a return in Elden Ring. There are a few tweaks to how it works precisely, but they got the crucial bit right. Big swords is good.
Taylor, don't hide. I'm still waiting for your entry too, and yes, Max, I see you pretending not to see me.
Max, you are not crazy. You are not dreaming. It's time to be an everyday hero.
If you'd have asked me in 2015 what the defining features of Life is Strange are, I'd have said 1. Rewinding time, 2. Teen drama, and 3. A main menu so chill it makes it very hard to start the game. Each of these 3 core pillars played their part in making Life is Strange a huge hit, but none was more striking than the time rewinding, which gave you, the player, something we could all have benefited from in high school: the power to rewind time and make it so the thing you just didn't happen actually. The emergence of this mysterious power was central to the twisty-turny high school plot of the game, as well as being mechanically very clever. It was used to solve puzzles or flip back in time again and again to try different ways of keeping Chloe's idiot stepdad from being shot and killed.
Kick that table!
Yes, sir!
Sorry, Mr. Chloe's stepdad, maybe next time. In an interview with Game Reactor, Life is Strange writer Jean-Luc Cano described time rewinding as the first stone that shaped all of the castle. And yet this incredibly cool mechanic was entirely absent from not only the spin-off prequel Life is Strange Before the Storm, but also from actual sequel Life is Strange 2.
We gotta go! Now!
Explaining the shocking departure, Cano said that the powers weren't meant to be the focus of the game, but the drama. Life is Strange is not about superpowers. We don't want the player to ask where the powers come from, and we don't explain it. It's not about what the power is, but how the characters deal with it.
Daniel, calm down!
You lied!
Which is a solid explanation, and all subsequent Life is Strange's have turned out just fine without time powers. But it's still a bit bizarre that such a distinctive and innovative mechanic is restricted solely to that first game. Thank God Life is Strange 2 retains the series' most crucial feature.
Super Mario 64 is a famously good game, but frankly, if you've made 63 Super Marios already, you'd expect them to have figured it out. Super Mario 64 was a bold reinvention of the platforming genre, and one of its most memorable features was the Peach's Castle hub world. This explorable castle served as a central terminus for all of Mario 64's actual levels, accessed via paintings. Replacing the old-school top-down overworld map method of getting around, this hub world was full of charm, packed full of secrets, and a joy to simply run around, enjoying the freedom of Mario's 3D acrobatics. The next 3D Mario game was Mario Sunshine, whose Delfino Plaza hub world was even more ambitious, and that was followed in 2007 by Mario Galaxy and its Comet Observatory, a sprawling orbital station controlled by space sorceress Rosalina that Mario gradually powers up by collecting stars. Then, for Mario Galaxy 2, weirdly, no hub world. I mean, unless you count the tiny Starship Mario, which we certainly don't, as it takes about 1 second to fully explore, and is mostly used to bring the player to a much more retro level select screen, in the vein of Mario's 2D adventures. Explaining the surprising decision to bin off the series' tradition of fabulous hub worlds, Nintendo auteur Shigeru Miyamoto told Game Informer in 2010 that it was about making it very easy and clear to players how to replay levels to find different stars, and said, "We want players to focus on the joy of the action instead of getting to each game course." Which is reasonable, except the hub world is basically the only place in the first 3D Mario games where everything isn't trying to kill you, which made it a lovely place to just hang out. Can't we relax for 1 second, Mr. Miyamoto? Sorry, hang on. Yes, Mr. Miyamoto, hi. No, yes, you're right, sorry. I was wrong to relax. No, I don't know your Netflix password. Why would I know your... Please stop calling here.
Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite set out to answer a simple question. Who would win in a fight between Ryu from Street Fighter and Iron Man, and also Mega Man is there, and Captain Marvel is there, and Morrigan from the Darkstalkers games is there, and Captain Marvel has the Time Stone? This 2017 fighting game had another objective, to revive interest in the long-running Marvel vs. Capcom series, which pitted Marvel's most iconic superheroes against Capcom's long list of famous game characters.
Going somewhere? Around we go! Caught me a big one! See ya!
Ludicrous tag team moves were a hallmark of this series, as were chaotic 3-on-3 battles, a highlight of the game since 2000's Marvel vs. Capcom 2 New Age of Heroes.
Your turn!
Picking a lineup of 3 fighters brought a deep strategic element to the game, for those who cared about that kind of thing. And for those who didn't, well, it was just more enjoyable Marvel and Capcom chaos. But 3v3 battles were cut entirely for Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Your third character replaced instead by... Oh, an Infinity Stone? The decision to axe 3v3 fights seems to have been an effort to streamline the game and make it more approachable to new players, but had the sad consequence of making Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite exactly 1/3 less hilarious than its predecessors.
Come at me with everything you've got.
It was one of several changes that saw Infinite received less well than the prior games, including the fact that the X-Men weren't in it anymore, which was probably down to rights issues, but that the developers also suggested, perhaps inadvisably, was because a typical modern Marvel fan might not even remember the X-Men. Great, Capcom, now I feel angry and old, just like Wolverine the X-Man from X-Men. Read a book.
It can't be that hard to come up with new Pokemon. I mean, have they ever done one that's teacup? Oh, they have. Oh wow, I see the problem. And yet, with every new Pokemon game, somehow the minds at developer Game Freak keep squeezing out entire regions worth of fresh pokes. And of course, in all those games, it's also possible to import and battle all the hundreds of Pokemon introduced since the series began. Because what's the point of a Pokemon game if you can't catch them all, after all? Enter Pokemon Sword and Shield. Released in November 2019, the sequels to the long-running monster-catching series garnered controversy months earlier at the E3 Games Conference, when the developers made clear that there would be a number of legacy pokes that couldn't be transferred into Sword and Shield.
So what that means for Pokemon Sword and Shield is that players will be able to transfer their Pokemon from Pokemon Home only if they appear in the Galar region Pokedex.
News delivered from behind plush starter Pokemon, perhaps in the hope that their cute, soft faces would be enough to calm the fury of long-term Pokemon players and cause them to be merciful. It wasn't. It didn't. The decision cut roughly half the Pokemon to date from Sword and Shield, although more classic Pokemon later became available as DLC for Sword and Shield was released. Explaining the decision, the makers of the game pointed to game balance, wanting to keep a high standard of animation, and probably most pertinently, the ruthless development schedule that requires them to bash out a new Pokemon game every few years, lest kids get bored of waiting and make their own Pokemon out of Roblox or something. The decision to finally limit the number of collectible pokes went down poorly, however, especially when it turned out the animations for the Pokemon that were featured weren't all that impressive. Still, at least Sword and Shield did feature new Pokemon, like Applin. Wait, don't tell me. Oh my god, it's an apple. What's it evolve into?
Flapple or Appleton, depending on what kind of apple you give it.
I think we should give the makers of Pokemon a few years off.
It's a bold game indeed that gives you a gun, but not the ability to hold two at once and go, ah! It's an even bolder game that gives you the ability to hold two guns at once and go, ah, and then takes that away from you.
As far as we go, Chief.
Let nobody say that the makers of Halo are not bold. Also, they have put a lot of misinformation out there about how easy it is to flip a Jeep. Also, can anyone help me flip my Jeep? Dual-wielding weaponry was introduced as a new feature for Halo 2, developers Bungie having realised that the only thing more satisfying than mowing down aliens in their droves was doing so twice as efficiently. Bungie was so proud of this addition, they even put a dual-wielding Master Chief on the box art. But by the time Bungie was developing Halo 3, they were clearly having second thoughts, especially from the perspective of balancing the game's multiplayer.
There's this thing we didn't really identify in Halo 2, that if you spawn everybody with a dual-wieldable weapon, like the SMG, it changed the game. People stop meleeing and people stop grenading, because when you're dual wielding you can't do either of those.
And when Halo players aren't killing each other with grenades or beating each other to death with the butt of a gun, well, that's not a world I want to live in. It's not a world I want for my children. It seems dual-wielding, although hilarious fun in single-player, was proving tricky to balance in multiplayer and messing too much with Bungie's holy triforce of guns, grenades and melee. And lo, the power to hold two guns at once was stripped from 2009's Halo 3 ODST. This time, the cover featured a clearly embarrassed Marine clutching his gun in two hands, in what we can only interpret as a humiliating climb down. Dual wielding was also absent from 2010's Halo Reach and didn't return in Halo 4 either, when the franchise changed developers. And a decade later, there's still no sign it'll make a comeback.
Is there a plan to bring back dual wielding in Halo Infinite?
Currently, no, that's not in the cards right now.
Well, you can't have everything, I guess. Okay, this Jeep isn't going to flip itself. Can I get some hands up, some volunteers? No? Anyone? Okay, well, you're not getting out of this car park until we get it moved, so I can be here all day.
Oh, you get me, don't you, dog?
Watch Dogs 2 improved on its predecessor in many ways, but most importantly, it actually featured dogs. Dogs you could watch. Set in a fictionalized version of San Francisco, the sunny open world of the Watch Dogs sequel was absolutely brimming with these furry little mortgage dodgers. And not only could you watch them strolling around, loving life with no concept of landlords or rent increases or climbing interest rates, you could pet them too.
Hey there, little guy.
So cute! And having made the effort to build the dog petting technology, of course, it only made sense that you could also pet the dogs in Watch Dogs Legion. Oh, I'm sorry, you can't pet the dogs in Watch Dogs Legion. Oh, I'm sorry, there are no dogs at all in Watch Dogs Legion. It's shocking, but true. The version of London presented in Legion may have been rendered with utmost accuracy and care in terms of its architecture, but was woefully inaccurate in terms of dog presence. Hey Ubisoft, I live in London and I've seen a lot of dogs here. Although to be fair, we don't pet them because that could accidentally lead to interaction with a stranger. A scenario with outcomes ranging from awkwardness to discomfort to making friends. Attempting to explain themselves, Ubisoft told PC Games End that there were no dogs in Legion because the game's complex simulation, which gives NPCs an intricate web of relationships, would mean they'd need to explain what happens to a dog when you shoot or run over its owner. Does someone adopt the dog? Said creative director Clint Hocking. Does the dog become a stray? Do we need to up-res the dog and make the dog a part of the simulation? We already bit off a lot and we were like, I don't know how we do that. I don't know how we deal with this problem. And so, yeah, no dogs. Clearly no one told old Clint about the special farm that stray dogs go to. Ask my mum about it, Clint. She has all the details.
What's up, dog? I'm dying here.
So those were some cool features that got cut from the sequels. What the hell, games? We were having fun with those. What? Bring them back. But, you know, maybe next week we'll do the same. No camera. We'll just do audio drama version. Yeah. I've got some gravel. I'm going to put gravel in a box and put shoes in it like I'm walking. Go on. Sounds. Yeah. Perfect. We're already top Foley artists here at Outside Xtra.
Here's another one.
Yeah, if you would like to support our very important Foley work, you can join our Patreon and you can ask us all about our Foley on Discord. Our very real Foley careers that we do. And also, if you want to, you know, watch videos that actually have like video on them, we've got some here that you can still go and watch, and you can subscribe to catch all our future Foley work. Thanks for watching. Bye. Wait.